Hey up everybody, and welcome back to the How Do Cycling YouTube channel. Is your Giro team letting you down? Is it not getting as many points as you'd hoped? Well, let's see if Dauphine can fix that. So, I haven't had much time to look at it because it was released whilst I was at work, but as we can see, Geraint Thomas is at the top. He is the favourite to win this race. There's a time trial in the middle, mountain stages towards the end, kind of flat puncher stages also in the first 4 stages, but I think that Geraint Thomas will be selected by a lot of people, and because of the new statistic in Velogames you can actually see what percentage of people have selected a rider. I'd be expecting many people to be putting Geraint Thomas on their teams. Richie, Porte, probably INEOS' second man. I know they have Geoghegan Hart, who technically has won a Grand Tour, whereas Richie Porte hasn't, but I do think that Richie Porte is a better time trialist than Geoghegan Hart, which means that more than likely after that time trial they will shove themselves into an order, being Geraint, Richie, and then Teo. So I'd say that Teo's probably going to be the domestique of the 3, and I'd say that Richie Porte will be second protected, so they'll probably go into a race all as like some co-leadership. But I'd say that Richie Porte is quite a good option. In fact, I'd say that most of these top riders are very good options. And I'm not going to say don't pick any of them. I say that they're all fairly good options. So let's whack Geraint Thomas in a team. Nairo or Richie. I'd probably say Richie is a better option. Then you've got these 16-point riders: Kruijswijk, Lopez, Guillaume Martin, and Enric Mas. Overall, I'd say Enric Mas is probably the one I'd avoid, just because I think that that's the way that the Movistar lineup will work. I think that Lopez is a better option, considering that he recently won the Ruta del Sol. I know it was against kind of weak competition, but at the end of the day, he just did a very good ride there. Kruijswijk is a bit of an unknown. He didn't do great at Tour of Romandy, but he could very easily bounce back, considering that this will be one of his main goals ahead of the Tour de France. So then Guillaume Martin won a race recently. His only difficulty is that his time trial is not great. You could say the same thing about Lopez, but it appears that Movistar have really turned his time trialing around quite recently. We saw that in Romandy. So overall, I'd say that Lopez and Martin, Kruijswijk are my favourites out of those guys. 14 pointers. Valverde is pretty good. Considering there's a couple of puncher stages, I think that Movistar will certainly be keen for him to try and get a stage. He's probably their best option. They'll also probably do quite well in Team GC, which is why I'm quite liking that. David Gaudu for 14, kind of a similar scenario to Guillaume Martin, where his time trialing will let him down. Will he get enough points to make him worthwhile for 14? Maybe, but he'll have to do quite an exceptional ride, in my opinion. Teo, bit of an unknown. I think he's a bit risky for 14, in my opinion, just because of Richie and Thomas being there. Jonas Zagir is going for GC, but we saw at Tour of Romandy just how those long climbs at, what was it, Fion 2000, he just came like 7th place in wet conditions. That would be perfect for him and ideally, but obviously just he's a good time trialist, and he'll be up there, but for overall GC maybe not so much, but a good option nonetheless. Wilco Kelderman, very similar to Jonas Zagir, and they're pretty much a very similar type of rider. Decent time trialing, kind of like a 6 out of 10, but their climbing will let them down. Sepp Kuss will more than likely, I think, be in a supporting role. We've seen him try and be a leader, but it just hasn't worked out too great. I think for 14 that's just a bit risky. Then you got the 12 pointers, McNulty, Turns, Woods, all good options. McNulty, I think he's going for GC. That time trial will be really good for him, but he will just drop off on the climbs. Dylan Turns, I think he's probably the riskiest out of 3. I'd probably, out of all the 3, I'd be picking him last. Mike Woods, we saw him do well in Romandy, but then lose a lot of time in the time trial, but would be a good option nonetheless for a fairly high GC placing, plus perhaps some good finishes on some of the puncher stages. Arambarou, I think, is a must for most teams, especially when you consider how he did at Basque Country. He is just absolutely one of the best punchers in the world. He'll be suited down to the ground for a good like 2 or 3 stages of this race. I think absolutely you have to pick Arambarou. I'd probably avoid Fabio Aru. Miguel, just because they're not going to place too high on GC and they're not a great time trialist. I'd avoid Chris Froome just for the meantime. I need to wait to see if he has any legs before I pick him. Jack Haig for 10, I think would be a bit too much for me. Patrick Conrad will more than likely be a domestique for Kelderman unless Kelderman crashes. Kwiatkowski, ditto that. He'll be on domestique duty. Ben O'Connor for 10, probably a bit too much as well, especially since, you know, he might place 8th to 10th on GC, just not sure if that's worth it. Tim Vellens will be for some breakaways and some stages. Again, a bit risky banking on somebody 10 points just for breakaways and like stage victories. Instead, I'd much rather take a Sonny Colbrelli for 8 points, who did incredibly well at Tour of Romandy. I think there's definitely some stages here which Bahrain will be highlighting for him. An absolute must alongside Arambarou, in my opinion. Joe Dombrowski after his win at the Giro. Maybe is what I'd say to that. Kenny Ellison, no. I'm just going to start going through names which really jump out to me, because otherwise we will be here for a long time. Christoph for 8, no. Lutsenko for 8, depending. He might do something, he might not. Madouas, I think is quite a good option, but again, will he just be in support of Godou? Aurelien Paris-Pentler, nice rider, but for 8, probably not. I generally just sprinters in the race. I'll just avoid unless they can climb. Mads Pedersen fits into that category. I wouldn't be picking Pedersen. Pernsteiner probably not. Not Rodriguez. Not Roland. Stuyven possibly just because he can climb better than Pedersen. Valgren no. Elan van Wilder yes. Just because he can time trial, he can climb. He might not finish really high up on GC, but he could get in the top 10. And I think that's him and Colbrelli are probably the best 8-pointers you're going to get. Venturini for 8, probably not. There are a couple of good 6-pointers which I do like. Casper Asgreen was one that stuck out to me immediately, considering how he was going at Volta Algarve. De Koenig do not have a climber in this race. He is probably a very good option for some breakaways. Plus the time trial, I think that's for 6 points. Casper Asgreen is an excellent pick for anybody's team. Will Barter, we saw it with Wells last year, but hasn't done much this year. Mikael Bjerg could be a cool option. It just depends whether he's allowed the freedom to like go and do his own thing, especially considering that they've got like McNulty for GC, and like he just doesn't quite fit at many of the stages too well. Who else have we got? Caden Groves, a sprinter, but like for 6 points is a bit better than somebody for 8 points. Matt Holmes for some breakaways. Volta Sudal, cool pick. I'd avoid Jakobsen personally. I know that he's come back from his crash, which means that he'll probably get dropped on the climbs, which will favour Asgreen because he'll probably be allowed to do his own thing a bit more and perhaps attack late in some stages. Perhaps I think it was stage 4. I think it's stage 4, which could be a good one for Asgreen, and maybe even like stage 1 for Asgreen. Damien Housen recently won the Tour of Hungary. I know that's not like a massive race, but still he's got a good form at the moment. Top 15 on GC, very possible from him. Narsen, Aegis have a very attacking team here. Will he be allowed? You know, they do also have Venturini, Greg, Aurelien Paris-Pentler. That's a lot of guys covering the same kind of terrain, so it's difficult to say who they're going to be sprinting with. So you'd be picking one and perhaps playing a bit of a gamble that they're going to go for that guy. Quentin Pacha impressed me at the Tour de France last year. Really good puncher. Probably B&B's like one of their main guys alongside Pierre Rolland in this race. So I think Pacha definitely for like 2 or 3 stages could be a really good option. Pause the video here. And then we've got, speaking of Jakobsen getting dropped, Seneschal could be a good option, because if Jakobsen gets dropped, then Seneschal would probably be De Koenig's fastest guy after that. I know they also have Shane Archbold here, but I do think that Seneschal is a more proven bunch finisher than Shane Archbold, which means that if Seneschal gets over the climbs, he'll be the guy that they'll refer to. And I think that could be a really sneaky pick, which could get you those points over a lot of people. Van Avermaet for 6 points, it's not often that you see Golden Greg for 6 points. I can't remember the last time that was. But for 6 points, I'd say that Greg's great value. Honestly, he's I'm quite surprised to see him here. I think that will be a great selection for a lot of teams ahead of a tour. You know, he's bound to be looking to test his legs, and definitely at least 2 of the stages suit him down to the ground. Dylan van Baal, we saw him at the Paris-Nice looking really good, but again, he'll be on domestique duty, so perhaps might be one to avoid, especially since there's Rodriguez, I think his name is, as a 4-pointer, which we'll come to in a minute. Carlos Verona, nice rider, but like they just have Mas, Valverde and Lopez, so he'll more than likely be on domestique duty. Jonas Vingegaard, I can't believe it's 6 points again. I think almost certainly is going to be on a lot of people's teams, considering that how he looked at, was it Basque Country as well? I think that's just such a fantastic pick for anybody's team, as Jonas Vingegaard for 6 points. You know, there's Kuss, Kruijsweg and then him. I think that's a very low risk, but perhaps big reward. 4-pointers, I'm bound to just 4-pointers. I'm not like going to be your big scorers, but there's going to be some which are going to score higher than probably what I say. But I'm just going to say the ones which I think are fairly safe. Julien Bernard is one for breakaways. He's just consistently in the breakaway just a lot, and I think that he could be contesting perhaps even for the Mountains jersey here. Marco Brenner, the exciting German from Team DSM. What will he be allowed to do? What will he do if he is allowed? I'm not too sure. I think that at 18 years old, perhaps we're expecting too much of the youngsters. I perhaps wouldn't be expecting an overly massive amount from him. Who else have we got? You got Sylvain Monique, another one of those Lotto Soudal Neo Pros. He looked good earlier in the season at the Ardennes Classics. Could be one to put on. Anthony Perez won the Mountains classification at Paris-Nice. He could be allowed to do that again if Guillaume Martin isn't, like, they're not just protecting him all the time. Here is Carlos Rodriguez for the assist points from INEOS. A very safe option, I think. You know, he might only get you 100 points, but that could be that could be what you're looking for. Schroenberger, who I've just accidentally picked, probably don't go with him. Matthias Skelmos Jensen is a fantastic pick for 4 points. He was that cost at the Tour of Romandy, and you know, I didn't put him on, but I certainly recommended him, and I'm going to recommend him again. Harry Sweeney, another one of those under 23 Lost to Dar riders, exciting, but I'm not sure what he'll be allowed to do. Kevin Vermaak did alright in Tour of Hungary, and that's about it. In terms of who I'd be thinking of picking, I'll select just a bit of a preliminary team here. So who we're going to go with? In my opinion, I think that Colbrelli, and then where is he? Arambarou, and then you've got like 14 left. So go with like Valverde. So something like that would be a really good team. So you've got Richie, Porte, Geraint Thomas and Lopez, who I think could all finish on the podium. I think that's definitely not out of the question. Valverde as a kind of backup GC guy, plus he might be allowed to go for some puncher stages. Colbrelli and Arambarou as your fast man, and then as your low pointers you got Skelmos Jensen, outsider, you know, top 20 on GC. You got Julien Bernard for breakaways, and you got Vingegaard as another potential GC option. That's just one iteration. You can swap these people around. You know, if you didn't want to go with Richie and you wanted to, you know, you want to go with some lower point riders, you know, you can put in Godot. You could swap out Colbrelli and go with like Mike Woods. If you wanted to go a bit more GC, you could even swap out Geraint if you want to. I probably wouldn't recommend this, but go with like Guillaume Martin. Use those 4 points on Arambarou and get Jonas Aguirre or something like that if you wanted to go even more GC intensive. But I do think that there's enough puncher stages to make it worthwhile putting on Arambarou or Colbrelli. They'll probably do a very similar job, so if you're stuck between the two, go with Colbrelli. And then 6 points, as I said, Vingegaard, Asgreen, Seneschal are the main ones which I can reel off the top of my head. Bernard and Skelmos Jensen as your 4 pointers. Colbrelli for 8, Landwehr Builder for 8, Arambarou for 10, would be an almost certain going on my team for a lot of scenarios. And then when it gets towards the top, they're all good selections, in my opinion, apart from Enric Mas. So just go wild. Your pick could be just as good as mine. Basically, go with your gut. My gut is telling me Lopez. My gut is telling me Geraint. And that's about it, really. I'll just need to wait and see what happens. That's about it. Thank you for watching the video. I hope this was useful, and I hope that you have a really good Dauphiné. Of course, let me know who you're going to be picking down below. You guys have helped me pick better teams in the past by putting stuff in the comments. Or alternatively, get in touch on Twitter. If I remember, I'll put in the @ or something. And yeah, all that's left to say is to keep your masks on, stay safe, and we'll talk to you after the Tour de Suisse.